The motion we have before the House in the semi-final is this House would allow the use of performance-enhancing drugs in sport, and to introduce the papers, I call upon the Prime Minister.
From professional league basketball to the World Cup and even to the Olympics, big issues caused by the use of performance-enhancing drugs exist. Lost medals change results. We see this in every single Olympic. Now, we must ask ourselves, and we must ask the others, why do players use them? Do they want to harm themselves? The solution to fulfilling the answers to these questions lie in allowing the use of harmless, performance-enhancing drugs. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I, as the first speaker for Team Government, would like to begin by defining the motion. We define the motion, this House to allow the use of performance-enhancing drugs in sports, and we define the word allow as not enforce restrictions on by the government. And we define performance-enhancing drugs as drugs that are not addictive and not harmful to the player's health, and yet help and assist the play of a player. And also, we would like to define the word sports as professional sports. Now, I, as the first speaker, would like to argue first that professional enhancing drugs will first make sports more fair and safe, and second, that it will be not harmful but helpful. Now, my partner, the second speaker, will mention that there will be more entertainment and also about the freedom of choice. Now, I'd like to move on to my argument. My first argument is that performance-enhancing drugs would make sports more fair and safe. Now, approved pharmacies will sell these legalized drugs, and this means there will be a significant decrease in the black market. Also, the cost of legalized drugs in pharmacies is much less than that of the black market, and therefore we can see, yes?
Can you give me examples of legalized drugs that are not actually addictive but helpful, only helpful?
In fact, there are these drugs being played, and these rules are actually being used in the Netherlands, for your information. Moving on to my argument. No, thank you. Pharmacy price is lower than the black market cost in many areas because there is no risk cost, no matter what. Now, and this means that more people will be accessible to these drugs, and it'll be more fair, because even poor sports players will be able to afford these drugs, and therefore everyone's playing ability will be increased, not just the more privileged or the richer people. Now, also, this will bring an increase for the demand of unharmful drugs, because if we use safer drugs, we will not get the attention of government agencies, and we will not be prohibited from using them. But now, yes?
Out of curiosity, could you just state for us one name of a drug that can enhance the performance and is proven to be non-addictive and has no side effects whatsoever?
In fact, I believe since this is an impromptu debate, I will explain that through thorough reasoning. Now, moving on to my argument. Now, the current problem exists that the players who consume newly developed drugs that cannot be censored through drug tests exist. And now, these players are getting advantages unlike other people because they have the money to purchase these newly developed drugs. However, what we can do is if we legalize some certain drugs that have no harm, then more research will be placed to produce these drugs that can be legalized, and therefore even newly developed drugs will be told to the people and the authorities because there will be no regulation placed on them. No, thank you. Now, this means that less harmful, more harmless drugs will be produced, and games will be safer and more fair. Now, my second argument is performance-enhancing drugs are not harmful but helpful. Ladies and gentlemen, let us take a look at the motion substituting the word drug with a substance. Now, would you still believe that it is absolutely wrong to allow them? Unharmful drugs are just like assisting substances and tools. Now, they assist and they help concentrate, strengthen muscle, loosen muscle, and they also ease anxiety. These effects can be gained through these drugs. Now, for example, soccer shoes, they produce no harm, helps playing, and it's not restricted. Tight swimsuits, they produce no harm, they help playing, and they are not restricted. Now, these drugs have no harm and helps playing and should not be restricted. The same should be applied to every single case because it's not harmful, but rather helps the players play. Now, this means that unharmful drugs will be assisting tools, giving benefits and no harm. And therefore, to give a brief summary, for the first reason of making sports more fair and safe, and the second reason of being not harmful but helpful, we, Team Government, strongly believe, and without the slightest hesitation, that the motion stands firmly. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and dear adjudicators. Now, I stand here opposing to the government who are trying to legalize the enhancement drugs in sports. Now, before I go on to any of my points, I would like to challenge the definition of drugs that they have pointed out. They have pointed out that they have defined drugs as non-harmful, non-addictive, and only helpful drugs. And I challenge the definition to extend the word drugs as all drugs that enhance the performance of the sports players. Now, before I go on to my assertions, I would like to refute to the government's points. Their first flaw was defining the drugs as non-harmful, non-addictive, and only helpful, and they have failed to give any names of at least one drug that is such. And of course, one could say that this is an impromptu debate, but still, you could at least know one if those kinds of drugs actually existed. And their second point was that the drugs will be not harmful but only helpful. Of course they say this because that's what they said in the definition. And to refute to this, the only thing I can say is that there are no such drugs exist. And to go on to my... No, thank you. To go on to our point.
Point of information.
Yes?
Do you have any proof that these kinds of drugs do not exist? Do you have any statistics, or do you have any proof by an expert?
Do you? Well, you have not given us, as the government, any examples or any proof. So we do not see the necessity to answer your question. And to go on, our arguments are, first, the sports use of performance enhancement drugs will cause a slippery slope effect on the player's health and the spirit of sportsmanship. And the second speaker will further develop on his point about how it's economically unbeneficial and the solutions that he gives to the sports field. Now, to my first assertion, drug is unhealthy for both mental and physical perspective. Of course, you know, drugs like steroids, the main drugs that, no, thank you, the drugs that we all talk about when we say sports performance enhancement drugs, they can cause mental disorders, and it can even kill people if abused. And to be abused, you do not need to take such a great amount. No, thank you. Only a bit of amount is needed to make that person addicted and to even lead to his or her death. And even if I talk with the definition of this of the government's definition of no harmful drugs, well, it will be still. Well, as they have not proven that those drugs do not exist, we cannot say that. No, thank you. We cannot say that it's unhealthy for both mental and physical perspective. And even if it is, it will even cause more people to use drugs, even if it's illegal, because they will see that since the legalized drugs can use, why not put some illegal stuff and be better by it? And to my second assertion, and of the drugs, performance enhancement drugs, they will they oppose the spirit of sportsmanship. No, thank you. Sportsmanship we talk about here is the spirit of playing fairly with what you have. And drugs are not what you have. They are chemicals inserted into you. And now that player that's playing with steroids, that's not you. And that's just the result of science. And we can call it cheating. And why will this increase? Of course, this will increase when drugs become illegal, whether they are, of course, non-harmful at all or a bit harmful. Because people will, they can, of course, all start with just the weak drugs. However, since everyone is using drugs, some people might think, why not use stronger ones? And of course, this might lead to illegal drugs as well, even if you start with the drugs that are not harmful at all, if you want to stick to that definition. Now, ladies and gentlemen, adjudicators, please, progress cannot be achieved through cheating or dishonesty. And for us to let sports progress and we should do it by the means of human endeavor. Thank you. This is the end of my speech.
What if we allow drugs to the players? Is the word drug uncomfortable to you? How about this? What if you could watch an exciting game of soccer with Pele score? What if you could watch a baseball game with great throws, great hits, great catches? These are the benefits we can get from the drugs, the products. Thrill, excitement, joy, and entertainment. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, fellow debaters, and respectful adjudicators. I'm the second speaker of the proposition side, and under this motion, this House would allow the use of performance-enhancing drugs in sports. We stand firmly that the motion stands. Before I move on with our case arguments, I would first like to rebut to the arguments made by the opposition. Now, they have challenged our definition of unharmful and non-addictive drugs and saying that no kind of drug exists. However, we acknowledge that the existence of these kind of drugs are rare. However, with the legalization, there will be more developments and improvements made in drugs so that the potential harms made by the drugs are equal to the potential harms of injuries which all sport players, no thank you sir, which all sport players have to watch out for. About their arguments on sportsmanship, drugs are just like sportsmanship. They say that drugs are something, they are not something out of the player's capability. However, drugs are just like the fancy equipments sport players all use. For instance, in the recent 2008 Beijing Olympics, due to advancements made in bathing suits, many world records and Olympic records were there because of these advancements in the equipments. No, thank you, sir. We, the team proposition, believe that drugs will work the same as the equipment. No, thank you, sir. And about no, thank you, sir. And about its unhealthy in physical and mental manners. As I stated before, drugs will be just like other equipments and something sport players should watch out for, just like injuries they can get in playing games. Now onto our case arguments. Yes, sir.
Have you thought about that on our definition as well? Because we have presented with two definitions.
And we reject that definition because we believe our definition doesn't have any flaw, because in the future there will be developments and improvement made in these kinds of drugs. Now on to our case arguments. Our first argument would be that performance-enhancing drugs will bring more entertainment to the game. With the drugs, the level of sport games will certainly go up, pleasing the fans who come to see great games and great sport.
Point of information.
Yes.
We, the closing opposition, believe that people are happy at good records because they are better than other records. Now, if you use drugs and all records go up, there is no meaning in good records because every other record is good as well.
Well, the limit of the drugs will, well, because all the players will be able to purchase the drugs, the record will have the same meaning as we have today, only more exciting and more entertaining to the fans. Now, proceeding, for example, about the entertainment. For example, when high school baseball players in America were able to perform well with aluminum bats, not wooden bats they use in major leagues. With those kinds of bats, there were an increase of people. No, thank you, sir. There was an increase in people who come to watch the games. Performance-enhancing drugs would only be different in that it will not be a tragedy for the pitchers because every players are able to purchase the drugs, and because of this, fans would be impressed and players would be satisfied. Then why not allow the drugs for the sake of better sport and better games? Now on to our second case argument, freedom and right of the sport players to use the products. Whenever a freedom is to be repressed, we have to consider whether the kind of freedom has done a significant harm to the society, whether that freedom or right has conflicted with the right of the others, according to the U.S. Constitution. Concerning performance-enhancing drugs, we the team proposition doubt this. Would it go against the rights of fellow players? No, because as stated by my teammate, every players are able to purchase the drugs because the drugs will be much cheaper than now and play in the same conditions. Would it go against the rights of the audience? Certainly not. They will rather enjoy the upgraded talents of the players and as elaborated before by me. Consequently, because there is no significant clash of freedom and rights, there is no need to ban the use of these drugs. Because of these two strong reasons, we the team proposition stand firmly that the motion should stand. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow debaters, and Madam Judicators, I know it has been tiresome because we have challenged the definition. However, for acknowledging that the reality, sticking to the reality that the sportsman, the thing that the sportsman uses, the drugs, the enhancement drugs,